Hello, this is Angela with Parkrose Permaculture. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, I have a permaculture food forest in Portland, Oregon, where I keep bees and ducks and chickens. And most of my videos are about gardening. However, today's video obviously is not. It is coming from inside our house. So permaculture is not about just gardening. Gardening is one element of permaculture design. So permaculture comes from the words permanent and agriculture, and it was coined by Bill Mollison in the 70s, who was an Australian. And it is really about sustainable design to improve the quality of life for humans and foster a resilient and regenerating interaction between humans and the earth so that it's mutually beneficial. Our quality of life improves without extracting from the planet. So for obvious reasons, that includes things inside your house as well as in the garden. It also includes things out in the community and your greater city and your state and your country and our interaction with humans all over the world. And our ecological footprint extends far beyond our home, but a significant portion of it is in our home. So we have a 100-year-old house. It's a land trust house. And if you're interested in information about land trust homes, I'll put a link in the description. Basically, our home will be a single family home for all time, and it can't be subdivided into smaller lots. Or apartments can't be put here. So this is a home that is for income qualified families. So it helps make affordable housing a reality for people. It's how we were able to afford a house. And it also ensures that this will be a home and this will be an orchard forever, I hope. So I recently worked on remodeling the living room. We put in a wood stove 2 years ago. That was a huge project we saved for, because in Portland you can't buy a used wood stove and you can't install it yourself. So that was a huge outlay and you have to get a permit for it, which I understand nobody wants improperly installed wood stoves and carbon monoxide poisoning. So I just redid the back behind it. I put in tile using used tile I got on Craigslist, handmade tiles. And then I just did all this wainscoting and painting and working on the living room. So I also have been working on, in quarantine, the kitchen. And this is where I want to talk about some permaculture design that I use. So we're trying to use reclaimed, repurposed, reused materials whenever possible. For one reason, because it has a smaller carbon footprint. It's not creating waste. It's not taking new resources out of the environment. And also because, honestly, if you're using repurposed things, they often are better made if they're old. So we go to the rebuilding center a lot, and it's more in keeping with the character of our 100-year-old home to reuse old things, old wood trim, old tile, and give it a new life so that those don't go in the landfill and we aren't having to create new resources and new products using wood and water and all of the things that go into manufacturing. So I did this backsplash, which has some repurposed tile and then some new tile. It was about $45 for me to put it in. And then our stove promptly gave out and we tried to repair it and it limped it along for a while, but it ended up needing an expensive part that, since we had bought the stove used many years ago, it was just at the end of its life. So I'm a big fan of the gift economy and free cycle. And a friend of a friend had just remodeled their kitchen, and this was their old stove, and it was just sitting in their garage. So they very generously gave it to us right when our stove died. But we put in this stove, and we didn't have any countertops. For 11 years, I haven't had any countertops. And it's been really frustrating to cook and not really have anywhere to set food or to prep food, other than behind me I have a baking station here because I'm a big baker. And it was really frustrating. But again, we're on a really tight budget. And in permaculture, you want to use the first principle, observe and interact. And for me, observing it's observe, pause, interact. It's even observe again, observe some more, and then interact. So we waited a long time to figure out what we wanted in this spot. And I really wanted a counter on each side. but I didn't want to use new resources. And I also wasn't sure how long we were going to have this stove. And I wanted something that was really cost effective. So we spent about $15. And I want to talk about what we did because it follows permaculture design principles. So again, we're using that observe and interact. I figured out, what do I need when I'm cooking? I really love to cook. I'm a huge cook. And so what's going to fit my needs in my kitchen and make it more efficient? And what is going to produce no waste, because permaculture has one of the 12 principles is produce no waste. So this project I used entirely repurposed things except for one element. So let's talk about it. So I went to the Rebuilding Center, and again, there'll be a link in the description. I'm a huge fan of the Rebuilding Center. So it's all salvaged stuff. And what we ended up doing was taking two cabinet drawers, two big drawers. So I measured, I needed to make sure they fit in this space on either side. And then we ended up using scrap lumber from our woodshed to raise them to the height that we wanted so that they were flush with the stove. And the first one here uses the permaculture concept of stacking functions. Actually, they both do, but so this big drawer, it is where we also keep our dogs' food and stand. So we have standard poodles and larger breed dogs. It works better if you feed them on an elevated surface, particularly breeds that are prone to bloat, which poodles are. So we have an elevated surface for them to eat off of. That is also my countertop. And if you look underneath, I sewed some little skirts, and underneath is where I store their food. So you can see I used repurposed pieces from a fencing project, and then my teenager cut and put felt on the bottom. That's wool felt left over from another project. And I actually didn't use any new fabric. So I'm a big fan of toile de Jouy. And I had these scraps left over from a project years and years ago. And when I bought this toile, I bought it at the thrift store about 15 years ago. And I've kept these scraps. So this is somebody else's throwaway. I bought it at the thrift store. I saved the scraps and I made these little skirts. And it's nice because I can then tuck things under the legs, and so it's got storage. It's got an area to feed my dogs that keeps the food up and off the floor and keeps it tucked away. And then it's also a countertop. So in permaculture, again, this principle of stacking, or not principle, but concept of stacking functions, we try to have every element do as many jobs as it possibly can. If you can get an element in your garden or in your home to do double duty, triple duty, then you are being more efficient and you are taking up less space. So we have a really small house. Again, 6 people, 2 big dogs. This is a great way for me to squeeze 3 things into a space that is 12.5 inches wide. Okay, so that's the first cabinet, drawer, which has become a countertop. And then the other one over here, let me move this butter churn, which comes from my grandparents' house in Indiana. So on this side, I also needed it to the height of the stove. And then underneath, this is where the only thing we bought new is that this side is on casters. So you can see more scrap wood, and then we put it on casters. And the reason for that is I want access to the storage space in here. So I used, you can see here, I didn't use toile because I was out of toile. I actually used an old crib sheet that I had saved. None of our kids slept in cribs, but they did sleep in a co-sleeper next to our bed, and I had a crib sheet for that. So my youngest is about to turn 9, so I obviously don't need to keep crib sheets anymore, so I use the material for sewing projects. So this is an old crib sheet, and this wheels out really nicely. Like I said, it's on casters, and flip it up here. And this makes a great spot for me to store things that need to stay in the dark. So I have my onions, and then I have rice in here, obviously, and then potatoes. So it just makes a really nice, easy roll in and out cabinet to store things. Pushes back really easily. And there we go. So it is, again, stacking functions. So that's a little bit about how some simple ways you can use permaculture design in your house when you're thinking about house projects, when you're thinking about changes. How can I follow those permaculture principles? They're applicable to everything in life. Slow, small changes, observing and interacting, using efficient design that stacks functions. producing no waste and reusing materials, repurposing materials so that our carbon footprint is minimal, so that we are being as efficient as possible. Not only efficient with our use of resources, but efficient with our design so that we waste less time, less money, less effort, and we have less of a toll on the environment. So these are things that would have otherwise gone in the landfill. And now at an outlay of $15 for me, I have functional countertops. While it may not be perfect, it works perfectly for our family. Again, like no trouble opening the oven. Perfect height, easy solution. Again, permaculture design is for your whole life. It's for you personally, for your garden, for your home, for your interactions with other people, with the community, with the environment. So thanks for watching. Hope that inspired you in some way, gave you some inspiration for when you're looking at your projects within your home, how you might want to tap into those permaculture principles. And I will be back with a garden video later this week. Thanks.